Hello, and welcome to the New Rochelle Bar Association Oral History Project. My name is Greg Varian, and I welcome Paula Johnson Kelly to be interviewed for this program. The date is September 29, 2021, and we are both participating in the recording of this archive. I have agreed to and signed the interviewer's release dated September 29, 2021, and Paula has agreed to and signed the interviewee release. With the formalities completed, let's begin the interview. Who is Paula Johnson Kelly? Tell me about your background, Paula.
Oh, who is Paula? Paula Johnson Kelly. I'll start with my name first. How's that? I was the second of four children born to my parents, and my mother named me Paula. My maiden name was Johnson, and she named me after Paula, who was a singer with the Modernaires. Paula's last name was Kelly. I did not know this. As I grew up in Staten Island, I went to high school in Staten Island. I started college in Staten Island. And I lived in Staten Island until I moved to New Rochelle, which was in 1994. November 15th, 1994, we moved here. Excuse me. And while I was growing up in New Rochelle and in college, I met a young man named Michael Kelly, and we ended up getting married. So I don't know if my mother had a premonition when she named me, but I ended up being a Paula Kelly. So that's where the name comes from. Paula Johnson is my maiden name. Kelly was my married name.
I know.
And so when I went to law school and was admitted to the bar, I was admitted as Paula Johnson Kelly, and I continued to practice under that name. So that's my humble beginnings, and that's where the name comes from.
How did you get to law school? Tell me about that process, your thinking process, where you went, etc.
All right, so when I was growing up, my goal was to be either an astronaut or a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician. However, the reality of the world at that time was that poor colored girls did not become astronauts, and poor colored girls did not become doctors. So my grade advisor in high school, when I sat with her and told her what my ambitions were, said, "Oh dear, maybe you should consider being a nurse or a school teacher, because that's the way the world was in the 1980s. Well, I'm sorry, I take that lie back. When the world was in the 1960s, okay? It's not that much different today, but fortunately, a lot of the ceilings have been broken. So I did a lot in high school. If I say so myself, I was very involved and busy, and I was the president of the student body. I was the president of my class.
What's the name of that high school?
Curtis High School in Staten Island. And I got married when I was a sophomore in college and stopped college. My husband was a senior, or he had just graduated when we got married. So I stopped because I married a gentleman, a nice man, who believed that wives shouldn't work. So I stayed home, and 2 years later I became a mom and had a daughter, Michelle. And the marriage was not one that was successful. And about 10 years later we got divorced. So I started doing, since I hadn't finished college, I started looking for other jobs, and I found jobs, mostly administrative jobs, working for different companies and corporations, non-for-profit, because that was more what I felt geared to. I must say that during the period of time I was a professional model, so I was able to support myself for a while by doing modeling work, which I had started when I was like maybe 16 or 17. But I have to stop saying too. One of my friends who was an attorney, who worked for the district attorney's office in Brooklyn, decided to go into private practice. But he had no administrative background. He couldn't run an office. He could run a courtroom, but he couldn't run an office. And he asked me if I would consider stop working at the company I was working for and come set up his office and run his office for him, because he needed somebody with an administrative background, and I had an administrative background. So I considered it, and I took that job on and I set up his office and hired his staff and put everything together and ran the office for him while he continued to practice law. And I found that people would come in and call me girly or ask me to get the coffee. And I found by listening to them and talking to them that I knew as much as they did, and in some cases more. But because I was a woman and because I was of color, I was considered less than them. So I said to my boss one day that this is crazy. I should be sitting on that side of the table and not this side of the table. I'm going to go to law school. And he said, well, you know, you haven't finished college, and you know how hard that's going to be, and you have to get into law school. And I said, I'm the kind of person who makes goals. I've always been that way. And if you don't make a goal, my feeling is you can't achieve a goal. Life just doesn't happen. You have to help it happen. So I said, okay, I'm giving myself 2 years. I'm giving myself 2 years to finish college and get into law school. I had set a goal. And so I went back to college. I went to school part-time, nights, weekends, summers, everything. I finished the 2 years of college. I got my degree. I took the LSAT, and I applied to all the colleges in the metropolitan area. I mean, all the law schools in the metropolitan area that had night programs, because I still had to survive. I was a single woman at that time, and my daughter was getting ready to go to college. So I got admitted to NYU and Brooklyn Law School. Fordham did not admit me. And both of them offered me partial scholarships. So Brooklyn Law School offered me a full scholarship. So I started Brooklyn Law School the same day my daughter started college. And that's how I got into law. And going to law school was the best educational experience I've ever had. It challenged my mind, it made me think, and being around mostly kids, because I was basically 20 years older than my classmates, stimulated me and gave me that sense of purpose that I had lost during the years of floundering in other jobs. So I became a lawyer. It wasn't what I started out to do, but it was where I felt I belonged.
Now take us to your work in the law.
I started out as most people start out in law school, or try to. When you go to law school, you end up with a lot of debt. So when companies offer you large positions with large salaries, you consider doing what they want as opposed to what you think you might want. So I started out doing corporate law, and realized that that was just not for me. And eventually, through friends and contacts, I found that my niche was in employment law, or labor law, but I started out by helping, anyway, I started out, my first case was a single mom who had worked for a company for a long number of years, who had a boyfriend, and she found that she was pregnant. She was Catholic, and she decided she was going to have this child, but the company she worked for did not like the idea of her having a child out of wedlock and working for them. So she went from being a favorite employee to being an outcast. And she came to me, well, she came to someone else who sent her to me, because she wanted to sue the employer for discrimination. At this point, I had very little knowledge of the discrimination laws in New York, which now I'm well versed in because I've been doing it for over 25 years. So that was my first case. And I became a litigator. I decided that law for me was talking to people because I'm a talker. And so I wanted to be in the courtroom and not in the boardroom. So I went to court, we tried her case, and I was successful. We vindicated her rights, and we were able to show a jury that, and it was an interesting case because she had been like a member of their family. They had treated her like a daughter. They had taken her on trips with their family. They had interacted with her kids. And then once she told them she was pregnant and she was not going to marry this gentleman, but she was going to have this baby, she was ostracized. They stopped doing things for her children. They stopped giving her presents. When she left to go have her baby, no one said anything. No one said a word as to goodbye, good luck, here's a present, here's anything. No one said anything. So being a woman and having lived through some of this experience myself, as a mom, I showed the jury, I said, okay, how many of you have been in an office where a woman is getting ready to have a baby? All the other women are, ooh, goo, goo, everybody's talking, everybody's giggling, laughing, carrying on. I said, she went from being the daughter to the day she walked out of the office, and you heard this on the testimony. Nobody said goodbye. Nobody said good luck. Nobody gave her a hug. Nobody bought her a baby present. Nobody. From going to their house and spending Christmas with them to being ostracized. And so that was part of my summation, and that's what won the jury over. Because, you have to use your common sense and realize people's actions show much more than what their words show. So I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm a trial attorney. I love being in front of a jury. Love it.
We think of lawyers as rational and cerebral and argumentative. But I think what you just demonstrated is that we also have to be empathetic. And what brought you to the North Shore Bar Association?
I moved to New Rochelle in 1994 with a 4-year-old son. And I moved here, I'm from Staten Island, which, and this is going to be a theme with me, I'm sorry, but it is, which had become very racist in my world. It had always been racist, but it was becoming more obvious. And my son is a child of an interracial relationship, marriage at this point. And one day I was at the playground across the street from where we lived, and my son was playing in the sandbox, and this other little boy, Caucasian little boy, came up, was playing with him. And the father was sitting close to me on a bench. And my son came up for some reason and got out of the sandbox and came over to me. And I'm sitting there reading a book while he's playing. He was three. And the little boy looked at me and looked at my son and said, "Oh, look, your mom's a nigger." And my son, who had no idea what was going on, I said, "Don't worry about it, honey." And I said, "Just go play." And the father said to me something like, "I don't know where these kids get it from." And I looked at him and I said, "From home." And I said, "Come, Evan." And I picked up my son and we left. And in that point, I realized this was not the environment I wanted my son raised in. I didn't want him treated differently because one of his parents was Norwegian and one of them was African American. I wanted him to be seen as who he is. And I was working really hard as a lawyer to make sure that other people were treated for who they were, not where they came from or how they looked. And so I searched around for communities that would tolerate this kind of a world that I was looking for. And New Rochelle had the financial breakup from rich to poor, the racial breakup from one nationality to the other. You can go to the playground and you can't tell which kid went with which parents because there is so much interracial children here and families here. And I said, this is what I want for my son. This is what I want for me. I want him to be treated based upon not the color of his skin, which is, he looks like he's Italian, but by the content of his character, as we've heard spoken. So I moved here, and since my office was now in the Empire State Building, it was a lot of commuting. And I decided at one point, because my son was ill, that I needed to be closer to home. So I found a job working here in a law firm with Robert Goodstein. And it was just fortuitous because I sent my resume to different firms in New Rochelle, and he happened to be looking for someone at that time, so it just worked out perfectly between the two of us. And he did labor and employment, and he was involved with the EEOC, and I was involved with the EEOC. So it just worked out well. And so one day he said to me, well, I'm going to the Bar Association, some kind of an affair. It wasn't a CLE, it was some affair. Come with me. And I was not aware of the New Rochelle Bar Association. So I went and I met different people. He introduced me. This is Paula, she works for me now, blah, blah, blah. And that's how I got involved from that one meeting with Robert.
I think I was at that function.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
So you went from being brought to a gathering to president.
Yes.
So
It was a long time in between, but yes.
okay. Well, tell us about, why did you decide that this organization warranted your time, effort, and dedication?
Because I saw the organization as something that really was involved in helping the community. And I believe in giving back. I believe in helping. So I wanted to put my 2 cents in and help develop the organization, help the youth that were being helped. I wanted to be involved, so I got involved, and I never regretted it. It was good. I met some wonderful lawyers. I made some great friends over the years, people who I will stay in contact with, even though I'm no longer practicing law. I'm no longer in this area, living in this area. But it was a good investment with my skills and with my heart to be involved.
Do you have any advice to the young practitioners?
Advice. The world has become such a difficult place. And everybody picks on lawyers and talks about lawyers, and what we're like or what they perceive us to be like. And I became a lawyer because I didn't like some of the lawyers that had been in my life. So I said, I'm going to become a lawyer because there should be some good lawyers. There are a lot of good lawyers out there. And the kids that are going through law school now or starting practice, they have to decide in their heads and in their hearts, is this for me? Is this right for me? And what can I do to help either my family or my community or my country or my world be a better place for everyone, not just for me? They have to decide, am I in this for the right reason? Am I doing this because my parents told me I had to be a doctor or a lawyer? Am I doing this because I'm willing to spend the time and the effort and the work to do it right? So my advice to you as a new lawyer is to look into your heart and decide, am I doing this for the right reasons? And if you can answer truthfully to yourself, then you should go for it.
Thank you, Paula.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.